Hi, everyone. Joed Lopez here, and I'm here with another free presentation that I want to open source to you guys for any type of higher ed professional looking to help students, especially those who are from underserved communities, who are people of color, who are trying to address the employment gap. And so I felt that in higher education, there's some more support that is needed for our students to really make the most of their academic career in terms of job readiness. And so I felt that social entrepreneurship holds a unique opportunity to not only help students grow with critical thinking, problem solving, but also prepare them for the workforce. Prepare them also to build a portfolio of sorts of valuable experience and enriching experience that they can put on their resume. So it pretty much you get a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to using social entrepreneurship as a tool for job readiness. So let me jump in by starting off with a story about a professor who's a professor of economics at a university. And oftentimes after class, in between classes, he would go for a stroll. And as you notice, a lot of times at a lot of universities, they're located in major cities. And it doesn't take long before just a couple blocks this way or that way that you find that there's an extreme difference in terms of quality of life, how the streets look, and the vast difference in terms of the economy what is how things look around the university versus a couple blocks down. What do the streets look like? And so he took a stroll, and oftentimes he would take this stroll. He would go beyond the campus grounds. And there was one particular time where he met a group of ladies who were selling little gifts and knickknacks, and they were handmade, and they're beautiful and seemed to be very popular. A lot of people were, shuffling by looking to pick some up. And he noticed, though, that a lot of them who were selling these things looked like they were in despair. They were just, they were downtrodden, just really looking pretty sad. And he waited until the crowd came through and dissipated, that he engaged in them in conversation. And he asked them, looks like you got something that's thriving here, thriving business. What seems to be the problem? After some exchanges, he realized that they were, in effect, victims of uh, loan sharking. Basically, they take out a loan for their inventory and for what they're trying to do. And next thing you know, there's always an additional fee, or the interest on the loan will go up, and they would never be able to pay back the loan. And so they knew they were stuck in this never-ending struggle of just trying to pay the person back who gave them out this loan. And so they saw their skills and their talents just really going down the drain because they could never get out of poverty. They could never get out of the debt. And so he was really, extremely bothered by this and asked, like, how much are you in debt? And she was a little hesitant, but she, eventually told him what the figure was, and his jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it. The next thing he did was reach into his pocket, grab out the money in his pocket, and gave her the amount and then some to pay off the debt. And she was hesitant at first. She didn't believe it, but she decided to take the money, pack up her stuff, and try to, get clear and free from this debt. So she runs off, going to take care of that business. He continues to walk back to campus and proceed with, business as usual for him, and teaching classes and taking his walks. And he noticed after a couple weeks, he didn't see her on the streets selling her crafts and her knickknacks and the things that she was selling there. And he was wondering if she was all right, everything's okay. But, he didn't think too much of it. A couple weeks afterwards, he noticed a group of ladies coming towards him, smiling, from ear to ear. As he got closer, he noticed that they were holding envelopes that were a little tattered, wrapped up in some twine that was kind of just ruffled up, um, not the best quality. And when when they finally approached him, he didn't really know how to greet them. But before they can exchange formalities and saying hi and how you doing, she gives him this envelope and he doesn't know what's in it. So he opens it up and finds out that it's actually the money that he gave her plus interest. And they were so grateful, so happy. They were able to have enough cash flow for their business that they can support their own inventory needs from cash from the profits they made, and they didn't need the lender anymore. And that was the whole goal. And so they started talking, and it was just amazing. And more people were interested in taking out this fair loan, and wanted to, expand their business in a fair and equitable way. And so they were talking about ways to expand on this. And the idea came up in his head. Hey, let's make this more of a formal thing. I'll go to the banks and tell them what's going on. And, maybe we can do a special lending program. He goes to the banks. Lo and behold, they say no. There's no collateral in cheap little knickknacks made out of wicker baskets or anything like that. It was just it's not viable. It's not worth the risk. What do they have in collateral? Like if they defaulted on their loan, what are they going to take? Their tables, their sheds where they lived? What was it? These people were in extreme poverty. And he decided that wasn't acceptable, that there was something in there, that was something in his gut that said, this can work. And this could be a viable way to empower women who are trying to become financially independent, who are in poverty, but also a way for it to be self-sustaining, where it's not pure charity, that this thing can, build up on its own as a business. And he actually went out and did that. He started his own micro lending bank and became widely known for his work in bringing people out of poverty through his micro lending program. And this person's name is Muhammad Yunus. And he was winner of the Nobel Peace Prize for his work through his bank called the Grameen Bank. And at first, a lot of people think that this is just that's a cute project. It's very cute, very nice. What a charitable thing. And okay, they're actually going to plan on being sustainable. So it's not pure charity. That's innovative. That's great, but it can never scale. He kept at it. He kept on seeing amazing returns, more people wanting to get in on this. And it was so powerful, so effective that Bangladesh slashed poverty in half in 2 decades. So this was not in the States. This innovative program did not happen in the States. It happened in another country where the poverty was so rampant that it took a person like Muhammad Yunus to use his educational background as a professor of economics, see the opportunity, see the need, and experiment and see something work. And because of that, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work. And so Muhammad Yunus was someone who saw that there is an opportunity to use current practices and methods in business and economics and finance and apply it in such a way that can have incredible impact. And so that's what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about social entrepreneurship and people who decide to become social entrepreneurs. But what is that? So a quick definition is a social entrepreneur identifies and solves a social problem on a large scale. So one of the things that you have to separate is this, a more local scale. That's not so much a social enterprise because it might be meeting a need that is more local and not able to scale, not a large impact. It might help with maybe a block or small region, but that's one thing that separates itself from like a project or a charitable organization doing some type of initiative. social entrepreneurship really goes down to solving a problem, not putting a band-aid on a problem, and they do it at a scale that can really expand. Another aspect of social entrepreneurship is that when they look at the people they're trying to serve, they don't look at them as passive beneficiaries of the service, of the product. You think of food banks. That's not solving a solution. We're trying to help a momentary need. That hopefully that they won't be using food banks for too long because it can bounce back or that kind of thing. And they're not just giving them food. A social entrepreneurship model might be something that can help them with making their own food or creating a model that they can feed themselves with. So they view the villagers, as this example of villagers, as the source of the solution, not just a passive beneficiary. And speaking of that model, social entrepreneurs are not content to just give a fish or teach someone else how to fish. They won't rest until they have revolutionized the fishing industry. And so that there's this element of disruption and innovation that comes with social entrepreneurship. That's not always there, but that's one big element that you do see a pattern of. And I like that, which is coming from Bill Drayton, from CEO and chair of Ashoka. So that is social entrepreneurship, and in general, and some of the broad strokes elements of what makes it a social enterprising endeavor. But here's the thing: what I define it as applied, interdisciplinary, and cost-effective problem solving for social good. Basically, you're using various elements of multiple disciplines: psychology, human behavior, marketing, economics, to solve a problem. Essentially, that's what business is applying interdisciplinary backgrounds towards one end goal. But in this case, the end goal is a social good. And so Yunus was known for this quote that all humans are born entrepreneurs. All humans are born entrepreneurs. Now, usually when I give this talk at conferences, I usually, field the audience and say, what did he mean by that? Let's expand on that. And a lot of people say, various things, that we're creative, that there is something in us that wants to go out and create something and do something. And I bring it back to this example that we were born entrepreneurs, meaning we were born creative problem solvers. When a kid wants to do something or try to get something done, they find ways. Think of the typical experience of a toddler wanting to get to the cookie jar on top of the refrigerator. They'll stack their toys, they'll put it on top of the chair, they'll risk their life just to get to the cookies. And it's funny how when as adults, when we try to solve a problem, we already put mental barriers and tell ourselves a story of why something can't work. Whereas as a child, you often find that doesn't even come to the question. They look into it within their own environment, and they try to use what they got to make it work. And so if they're going to have a fun time, forget the toys that mom and dad bought me. I'll use this box because it's the closest thing right next to me and I haven't seen it before, or whatever. Pots and pans are right here, so I'm going to use this as my toy, And so that's the kind of thing that that childlike curiosity to make something into a different thing is a hallmark of social entrepreneurs, that they're creative problem solvers and they're willing to think outside the box. But when it comes to our students, and if you're a student now, and you're watching this, you might see that there has been a stifling of creativity, of imagination, of this type of entrepreneurship in our education system. And I want to share with you a quick summary, expounding on that and what we have to, and how this sets the table for undoing that and helping students and staff really prepare for a career in a job market that is looking for this type of, entrepreneurship type of thinking. So I'm going to go right here and share with you a video. This is a TED Talk of Sir Ken Robinson about changing paradigms, more so changing education paradigms. So take a look.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are two reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on Earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which is if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that.
And for good reason that they don't believe that. This generation is taking so much debt that 6-month grace period before paying back your debt is so crippling in terms of fear that students are taking any job, whatever job they can take, that doesn't have anything to do with their major most of the time. So they don't believe it because now more than ever, it's less and less true.
And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if...
And let's not overlook that. It's not a guarantee anymore. There was a time, I spent about over 6 years in higher education. There was a time where we were told, even me as a student, if you get a college degree, you're set. Hired by guidance counselors, family and friends and parents and grandparents. You need education, you need education. And again, you're better off having it, but it's not a guarantee of a job or a job that's really possible for a living wage or to pay back your debt and that kind of thing.
The route to it marginalizes most of the things that you think are important about yourself. Some people say we have to raise standards as if this is a breakthrough. You know, like, really, yes, we should. Why would you lower them? You know, I mean, I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. But raising them, of course we should raise them. The problem is that the current system of education was designed and conceived and structured for a different age. It was conceived in the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment.
Here it is.
And in the economic circumstances of the Industrial Revolution. Before the middle of the 19th century, there were no systems of public education. Not really. I mean, you could get educated by Jesuits, you know, if you had the money. But public education, paid for from taxation, compulsory to everybody and free at the point of delivery, that was a revolutionary idea. And many people objected to it. They said it's not possible for many street kids, working class children, to benefit from public education. They're incapable of learning to read and write, and why are we spending time on this? So there's also built into it a whole series of assumptions about social structure and capacity. It was driven by an economic imperative of the time, but running right through it was an intellectual model of the mind, which was essentially the Enlightenment view of intelligence. That real intelligence consists in the capacity for a certain type of deductive reasoning and a knowledge of the classics originally. What we come to think of as academic ability.
So basically, this is how our entire education system is framed. That it's by this academic ability, you know, deductive reasoning, knowledge of the classics, reading, writing, comprehension. Like that is the defining factor of what makes someone smart. And that was off. He doesn't go into it here, but that's also associated with classism, where it's like, you know, if you're just like back then, if you're a street kid, or if you came from the hood, these things were beyond your capacity and beyond your ability. So it really wasn't worth trying or bothering. Obviously, we're in a better time now, but there's still elements of this in education and higher ed, especially that this is what's needed for you to be successful in the economy, in the job market. And this is where this breaks down.
And this is deep in the gene pool of public education, that there are really two types of people, academic and non-academic, smart people and non-smart people. And the consequence of that is that many brilliant people think they're not, because they've been judged against this particular view of the mind. So we have twin pillars, economic and intellectual. And my view is that this model has caused chaos in many people's lives. It's been great for some. There have been people who have benefited wonderfully from it. But most people have not. Instead, they suffer this.
I'll leave it here, but this is essentially what I was getting at, that there's this breakdown and this making education a thing about abilities of classism, where there's smart people and not smart people. And there's an ignoring a total different skill set altogether, and how that can be important to the job market. And so that's where I want to go back to with an example. And what I mean by this, that higher education in general, if you're a student, you notice that a lot of it's built on one's type of academic development, intellectual development. And this is one example here. And this is something I want you to participate in and join me in this activity, because the activity I do with all of the participants at conferences that I go to and share this with is, in the next 2 minutes, how many different ways can you rearrange the letters in the word cat? How many different arrangements can there be in the word cat? So check it out, pause the video and try it. 2 minutes. And I dare you to let me know how many different arrangements can you make. I'm going to stay here and wait. Okay, so you paused it, and hopefully you tried it, and there's different ways to go about it. The solution is by hand. You can just literally write it out, or you can use it by using a formula. Factorials is a great solution for this. It can save time. You take the number of letters, it's 3. You subtract it by 1 each, and use those numbers as the multiple. So 3 letters minus 1 is 2, minus 1 is 1, and then you just multiply them. 3, 2, 1, and that's your answer. The answer is 6. And so, and it's funny because some people in the conferences that I go to, they come up with like all these numbers, like sometimes 8, 15, some people, just give up or not sure or that kind of thing. And it's just so amazing that a lot of us who work in higher education, we stumble on this, when it should be supposedly a pretty straightforward activity where you can find a solution. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's another activity. It's a little more open-ended. It says you want to sit at a given table, but the only available chair at the table is broken. The chair only has 3 legs. What can you do with a broken chair to be able to sit at the table? Now, in this type of activity, people go into teams sometimes and come up with ways, and I start fielding from the crowd, what kind of ways can you do it? And these are great answers too. Some people say, just rebalance the position of the chair where it's on the 3. Just make sure you don't lean forward. Some people say, try to screw it together and use it, put it back together and sit down together. Some people say, hey, is there another chair in another room? Go get it from another room. Some people say, do I even have to sit at all? Sit at all? Can I just sit on the table and talk to people? And so all these different things come out. And there's no real right or wrong answer. There's just one that might require less resources. Some require more resources. And so this is a different type of style activity. And the question I pose to students and to staff is that when you graduate, what type of problems are you going to be solving in the real world? Something like this, that is finite, there's only one answer, or something like this, there's multiple answers. Some might be more realistic than others. Some might require less or more resources than others. And you have to determine what will be the best solution for the context you're in. And so obviously the overwhelming answer is that the real world, when you're working, is that you'll face way more issues and challenges that are way more open-ended and go towards problem solving activity number two. And there's a reason for that, is because our economy, our job market is really is really set up in a way where you need systems thinking or divergent thinking to really find solutions that are viable. Whereas in academia, a lot of it's based on analytical and linear thinking, where it's theoretical. Things are in a vacuum, so you can isolate answers and all those things. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's only to say that our job market has more and more and more been looking way more like systems and divergent thinking needed. And so that's where we have to restructure our way of thinking about higher education and how we serve students. And why is this important for social entrepreneurship? Well, one, it really gives them a way to look at the world in a new light and say, hey, I can be a part of the solution. I can be a part of the way of delivering something of value that, again, might not be right or wrong, but could offer something unique. And there's no right or wrong answer here. Just one of many answers. And that's where it's super important. And you notice this too, like for example, a lot of higher education institutions are leaning towards more technical skill sets, nursing, RNs, all kinds of things that are more technical related. Some are going overboard. Some are finding the trends and just trying to hijack the trends and, throw programs together. Some are a little more thoughtful, that they're really trying to respond to the job market of the students and say, hey, how can we, serve students, but still do this program justice? And so some schools do it better than others when they turn to adapt to this new job market. Some are digging in their heels that we're going to be a traditional old school liberal arts, and we're just going to do the classics, do the foundations the best way possible, and then let the job market do the rest. And obviously there's trade-offs for both, and there's different ways of going about both. But this is what comes down to students. Ultimately, they're the people who are going to be benefiting or dealing with this struggle. And so this is why I try to stay away from the philosophical arguments of like what's better in higher ed, and stay closer to the more pragmatic or practical aspects of it. And at the end of the day, this may sound cheesy, at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's about students. And I find that if my solutions are leaning towards something that serves them the most, I think it's we're less likely to find error, or I think it's safer bet to point our solutions towards keeping them top of mind first and foremost. And so this is one example for a student who's a communications major. I can't land an internship. I'm going to be a senior. Communications is such a broad major and a broad spectrum of types of industry. They might not feel prepared or know what space they want to get into. So what happens? And I feel this from students, from the staff and students there. What would you tell someone? Network with your professors, go to see the career center and see what they can do, right? That's usually the first thing to do. Also, another thing is go to clubs, the communications club or that kind of thing, and see how you can be a president there. You can really put something nice in your resume. Sometimes if you're a senior, timing is kind of rough to make that happen. So here's what social entrepreneurship says. Instead of trying to find a gatekeeper to say, hey, you can work at our radio station, you can be an intern at our radio station, you can do X, Y, and Z wherever, instead of trying to get through a gatekeeper to get experience, social entrepreneurship's model is, hey, I'm going to make my own radio station. And what they're called now are podcasts. Essentially, instead of going with a whole full-fledged radio station with all this equipment, like in this picture, with the whole studio, all you need is just what I'm using, a computer and a microphone, and if you want to, a webcam. Now you're, a TV personality or video personality, and you can create your own type of show. Or even if you that's more entrepreneurship. Um, Now, if you want to create some experience out of that, you have the access to these tools. For a lot of them are free. How can you make it social entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial? Well, you can go to local nonprofits. You can go to local churches or any type of organization that's creating social change and say, "Hey, can I interview you? Can I showcase what you're doing, the amazing work that you're doing?" And then talk to 3 or 4 people, interview them, throw up on YouTube, and boom, you're already building your portfolio. You're also learning how to use the equipment. You're also learning how to edit. You're also learning how to, work on your people skills to get people to say a yes to a random stranger to sit down with you. Um, and set up a time. You're learning how to book schedules. You're learning how to set up reminders in your phone and your computer so that you're professional. You don't miss dates. You don't miss deadlines. And so you're doing research on these people that you're trying to interview. And then so, boom, you're getting all this real world experience that otherwise you would not have gotten unless someone else had to say yes to you. And so I'm all about, while we wait for the amazing internships that are going to come down the road, while we wait for other people to say yes to us to determine whether the student is good enough or not, we're going to say we're going to do our own thing. So it's not to say that traditional internships are bad or not suitable or valuable. I'm just saying that with an ever increasing competitive internship market, you're better off doing something on a smaller scale, lower production, but more meaningful in the meantime. And I would argue that sometimes this would have a better experience than a traditional internship, because some internships, they're, I mean, I was doing academic advising for about 6 years. Some students would be so disappointed walking away their internships. They get no value, um, no support. Sometimes it will crush their passions, and they have a whole they have a totally disconnected what they thought the industry was going to be. And in some ways, if that was right, that's good. They get to know that. But sometimes it can kill their passion, and it's just because they got a wrong internship. So that's one example. Here's another one. I love writing, but I don't know what to do with it. This is English majors. This is a huge one that becomes challenging. Traditional says go to career services, learn about what you can do with your English major. Maybe start writing for the newspaper or the poetry club or that kind of thing. Right? Bogus. That's not good enough these days, especially if you're an English major. That's one of the harder ones to find a meaningful job these days. What do you know that you're passionate about? What is your passion? And start a blog. You can start your own blog. You can self-publish a book. You can self-publish short stories. You can forget writing for the newspaper. Create your own newspaper. Create an alternative newspaper on your campus and bypass the politics that come with the local school papers. Listen, again, I've been there, down there. I used to write for my school paper at Montclair State University, and especially for the bigger schools, there's so much ego that you have to, and bureaucracy that you can work through sometimes, and that it can really hurt your chances of getting real experience and getting out there. So you go and get out there on your own. Just check that out. So don't wait for someone else to say, "Hey, you're good enough. You're great. I'm going to choose you." When they have a million and one things they have to look through and do, and they might be, going in a different direction. In the meantime, until you get noticed, until you get picked up, do your own thing. In fact, it will most likely help you get picked up because they can see what you're all about and see your body of work. So that's another example. And again, I'm being loose and off the top of my head with some of these examples and what I'm saying. So just take it with a grain of salt. This is a huge one. Criminal justice major. A lot of people I won't get on my soapbox about this major, but essentially, criminal justice is just the sociology of criminal justice history. Like, it's really a sub discipline of sociology. So I think it's one of the most misleading majors that they should really change this name, because they think that they're going to walk out of here from a criminal justice major, graduate, and start working at in DC as a detective or CSI, and they have all these misconceptions about what it is and what this major actually does, and I think it's doing a lot of disservice for students who are interested in this space. So really, criminal justice majors can do. They're actually they sometimes have a better shot at doing some policy work and getting into that side of work than anything else. But again, mixing different passions and blending those things together. So I don't know what to do with my major. If this student is great at writing, cover corruption in criminal justice. If you're passionate about law, about changing laws, then cover policy, the effects of policy, blog about that. If it's about community and police watching, community organizing, then that might be an aspect of it too. How can you get involved with community organizing that has special attention to maybe building better relationships between the police and the communities? And so you might find a niche there that can really help you out with getting some real world experience. There's so many local committees in cities and towns that actually have some type of board membership or even student access to these committees, where you can sit on these committees and participate in meetings. And so you get to network. So you really have to do some digging on find out who those people are, and asking about those opportunities. Even if you just sit in meetings, how about you just shadow the chair of that committee and take notes for them, or that just being in the same room as these individuals. There's a saying called proximity is power. By being so close to these things, you can really expand your network tremendously. And so essentially what I'm trying to get at is that social entrepreneurship, this model for job readiness, is like, find the major, find the passion, then find the problem. Between those three things, you have a really strong true north to work with. At that point, it's just a matter of some Googling, some looking up on LinkedIn on who the people are in that area that are solving those problems, and then plug in. Is there a process to get involved? Is there a process to connect with them? What is that like? Get plugged in. So that's pretty much the formula that any student can walk away with and start immediately finding incredible impact. With that said, why this? Why now? There's the government and institutions they're losing so much trust these days, and students are so ripe with passion and ideas that we should tap into that and channel that in a healthy way. And so students can really be part of the solutions in their own communities, especially if you're an opportunity-based program. Students are coming from cities and towns that are really struggling with crime or education and corruption. Like, we need to empower them to solve those things and use their academic major as a launching pad for finding solutions. And this is the beautiful thing, is that it really blends together the intellectual capacities of the student, that when they are doing the research, they have to test their assumptions about the problem. They have to get super specific about the problem, and learn what that looks like, and be able to describe that succinctly to someone else. And so there's this intellectual development and capacity that gets created when it comes to explaining these complex issues and trying to get a handle on that. And then, going about solving it. So instead of growing up saying, what do I want to do when I grow up? Is like, who do I want to be? What kind of problems do I want to solve? And that's a different line of thinking that can really be helpful. So these are things that are easy to do. Just for starters, a student can go to campus and find long-term or specialized services that they could be a part of. They can look for local community nonprofits, and then also there's national organizations that have chapters. So those are also great times to connect with too. And I'm going to skip this. These are ways to really, if you end up doing something like that, how to keep track of your learning, how to keep track of your internship, your mini entrepreneurship experience and social entrepreneurship, and how to connect that with students as well. And if you want to learn more about how this can be translated in your program in a way that's in alignment with your institutional's strategic goals, just give me a ring or visit me at penvisio.org, and I'll be glad to sit down with you and the leadership and say, hey, this could look like a great pilot. And maybe start with one major, maybe start with one cohort. Maybe bring in faculty, maybe just keep it internal with one faculty instead of making a formal thing. That alumni is a great part of this too. How do you channel this with alumni? If someone's a criminal justice major and you have a database of alumni information that you can look through and you see some people who worked in law or criminal justice, then maybe there's an opportunity there to connect with alumni in a more organic, relational way. So take a look at that. On the website, you're going to be able to see this PowerPoint and this video, and feel free to share, take the PowerPoint, edit it. Just please ask this one thing, that you cite the PowerPoint original creator in the beginning of the slide and the last slide. So please keep penvisio.org on the first slide, keep it on this last slide with my name. And I think it's important that we take this and share this information and share this model. I think it'd be a breath of fresh air for students who are kind of jaded about their higher ed experience and might need something fresh and new to really jump on as they finish their academic career strong. This is Joed Lopez, penvisio.org. Again, love to connect with you and help you out with how to get this off the ground, even if it's a pilot. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon, and let me know your thoughts. What's your thoughts on the state of higher education as it comes to students from underserved areas and how they're being prepared? Love to hear their thoughts on that and join the discussion. All right. God bless. Talk to you soon. See ya.